went through it. And, barrister, 15.8 trillion to debt servicing alone. We're servicing, we have not paid. We didn't say we have paid. 15.4 trillion recurrent expenditure. Barrister, in this same country that we're in, the last budget of last year has been given a grace to end in the first quarter of a new year, June 30, meaning that 2026 budget has not started at all or will not start or cannot even start because we have to see the end of that particular one. So what will happen from January 2026 till June, off record, is just a question. I'm not saying it. So in July 2026 to December, what would happen? Barrister, you have to give me clarity on this. And please talk from the legal perspective of this particular conversation, because we need clarity in this country. It shouldn't look like some of us don't actually know, why we are Nigerians.
Well, thank you very much. I think when they hear that Nigeria is a crime scene, one of the things that addresses that reality is our relationship with the budget. Section 80 and 81 of the Nigerian Constitution provides that no kobo should be spent from the federal revenue without appropriation, without a budget. And it also, Section 80 forbids anticipatory approvals. That when you spend, believing that it must be approved. But you see this government doing this repeatedly. They keep on committing crimes. They keep on committing unconstitutional acts in the name of a budget and appropriations. Let me give you a core example. When Mr. President traveled to the United Kingdom, he signed loans, 746 million pounds loans for a project for the port revalidation, only to come back to Nigeria and apply to the National Assembly to approve the funds for what he has already signed for. That is anticipatory approval. That is a crime. That is an unconstitutional act. So when somebody like Lateef Fagbemi is the Minister of Justice, when the laws, when the Nigerian Constitution is being flouted on a daily basis, you shiver, you ask yourself, what has become of the so-called title of Senior Government of Nigeria? Because the budget is Mr. President is not signing, and the lack of even implementation continues to make Nigeria a crime scene, the government itself a crime scene, because it rules as if national funds is in the back pocket of Mr. President. Whatever he wants, he puts his hand in his back pocket and pays for it. That was how the so-called Lagos Calabar Coastal project was signed. Less than barely coming into government, he announced it, and that the money was already paid. Who appropriated, who budgeted for it? I mean, and coming back to what you asked about the way this 60-something trillion is being shared, about 25%, which is 15 trillion, for debt servicing, not even debt repayment. In fact, there's no cover for debt repayment.
We're not paying the debt. It's just servicing.
We're just servicing the debt. And then you have 15 trillion again, and 25% for recurring. What is this recurring? Let us not blow big grammar. This is what is used to pay for the about almost 30 PAs or SAs Mr. President has on media only. 30 PAs on media. And they went over almost 200-300 PAs. In any sensible administration, when you say there is economic downturn, what you do is you cut down on overhead. You cut down on wastages. From those who speak for Mr. President, you hear Renomokri saying something, and another is talking, all of them FA on media. And that is how you come to this 15 trillion wastage. And they talk of the remaining of about 50% on capital expenditures. It's a lie. Why do I say it's a lie? In the immediate last budget, when we were coming for the last budget presentations, you hear people like the Minister of Health telling us point blank that we got less than 6 million, despite over several billions allocated to this ministry. You even have some ministries come and tell Nigerians that they did not get a dime. It did not get a dime from what was allocated in the budget. Now you ask yourself this question. The budget is not a joke. When it is signed into law, it becomes a law. It means that you must back it up. You must pay for it. You must allocate funds based on what is in that document. Mm-hmm. So the document funds meant for the Ministry of Health, for the Ministry of Humanitarian Affairs, that don't get to them. Where did these funds go? And let me answer that question in bit for some from those who don't know. It is these funds that are misappropriated in order to fund for the $9 million Nuhu Ribalu's office paid for PR to a lobbying group in Washington, D.C. So you see that this is a cacophony of criminality. And when they want to sign this budget, you see Mr. President come there, and you see the minister, CBN governor, as if they are doing anything meaningful. They are actually committing crimes, even the day he signs that budget. So we only hope that a government will come and hold these characters accountable for the various crimes they are committing.
All right, Barrister.
So the so-called investigated and prosecuted. Yes.
All right, Barrister, thank you so much. Now, let me just stay with you for a few more minutes. You talked about, how budget is being signed into law, and of course, it becomes, a law. Now, well, you talked about the health sector, which I think we should not even go into. Almost all of us, on this, table or in this room, and of course, you joining us virtually, we all have, hospital cards from private hospitals, not because we do not like state-owned hospitals or federal hospitals, but because they've been neglected and, the necessary equipment, things that we expect them to have, are not there. And of course, some of them have actually decided to rather leave the country than to stay here. But let's leave the health sector. Of course, you would see that our Nigerian doctors are going on and off, strike because of this. They now look like Nigerian NEPA lights, off and on. National grid collapse today and up today tomorrow. But let me stay on the security part. When several budgets is signed in this country, usually we hear a certain amount of money go to the security, for security, and we usually hope that the country will be safe enough. A country that is not safe cannot thrive, cannot prosper. We don't even know how to explain ourselves when it comes to 2025 budget, which has not been totally concluded. And we've actually seen what has happened, a spillover of insecurity, insurgents in this country. Now we have 2026 budget that even more, was actually given to the security architecture of this country. But, Barrister, how do we account or how do we hold the government accountable for all of these things? Because tomorrow you would hear that, we have different equipment, different technologies, air this, air that, blah, blah, blah. And they are still misfiring. Innocents are still going. Innocent people are still dying. Tomorrow you would hear that
yes.
our personnel are not overwhelmed. But it's not looking like that. How many generals have we lost? So how do we actually hold these people accountable? What should be done? How should we actually look at this particular budget? If you say this is actually going for security, I would confirm that, yes, we've actually used it for security. We just need clarity.
No, the reality is this. When you have somebody who has a track record of criminality as your president, you can only expect crime to thrive. Whatever funds that are put into the defense sector will disappear with the wings. Just like that of the health, transport, they will disappear in the wings. You hear generals, in fact, there was a video of a general who was complaining on video, asking for weapons and ammunition that his soldiers were. What did the Ministry of Defense do? They removed him and they punished him for daring to speak out. He shouldn't have spoken out quite well. But then he was desperate. He was in the field of battle and he knew he was facing imminent death. So the only thing he could do was complain. And I thank God he complained. Because the one that died not long ago in Borno perhaps did not complain. well enough, and it cost him his life. So the reality is this: the money will continue to disappear. They will tell you that because of the insecurity, they are giving the highest segment of the budget to defense.
Sorry to interrupt. You continue for emphasis. The Punch newspaper has it this morning that 10 senior officers have been killed in 7 months.
7 months, Barry.
10 senior officers of the military. So you can continue, just for emphasis, so we understand.
Yes, I'm sure they were referring to brigadiers and generals, but also you have colonels, lieutenant colonels, majors, captains. These are all human beings. They are fathers, they are brothers, they are relatives. So the cost on the Nigerian defense area is huge. Some of us have posited that those who misappropriate the should be charged for murder.
Okay.
Not just financial issues. Now, why do I say this? Because directly, when you deprive our soldiers of the means to protect themselves, and they get it, you have directly led to their death, because they now confront people who will kill them, and by their training, they are not supposed to just withdraw. So those who misappropriate the funds for the health, for the defense sector, should be charged for either manslaughter or murder. Okay. And it also applies to various sectors, including the health.
All right, Barrister.
Yes.
All right, Barrister. Thank you so much for that.